Hello and welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast Week in Mobile Games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. I'm Craig Chapple, head of content at PocketGamer.biz. With me today are Aaron Astle, our news editor, Paige Cook, our deputy editor, and you can't see him, but my cat Gizmo may make a starring appearance. Whether he actually shows up or you just hear me react because he scratched my leg, it could go either way. But yeah, so Paige, Aaron, what have you been up to?
I missed the podcast last week for my birthday, but I did look at last week's podcast because somebody wished me happy birthday, and I was thinking, how did they know it was my birthday? So I looked at the podcast, and just you two are like, Paige, you have to still listen to the podcast even though you're not here. So I did.
I'm glad that made it in.
That's the proof.
It did.
That's the proof. Paige listens to the podcast as well, and someone else listens to the podcast.
Yeah.
So
I was thinking, like, how did you know it was my birthday? And they were like, oh, well, it was mentioned on the podcast. And I was like, oh, well, that's nice. So yeah, I just had a really lazy birthday this year because I'm so busy through December. So I just wanted some time to catch up on some games and get organised for Christmas. Like, I am very prepared this year for a change.
But how prepared? What does that mean? You've got all the Christmas lights up, the Christmas trees up.
Well,
you put up a while
the
ago.
lights have been up for like a week, and now there's
Yeah.
a tree full of presents. Like, I think I've done all of my Christmas shopping minus one of my sisters because every time I ask what she wants, she doesn't know. So that's on her. If she doesn't get anything, it's her fault.
My sister's the same. She always has a go at me for like, oh, you never say what you want, and then I'm like, what do you want? She's like, I don't know. Don't get me anything. Thank you. Cheers.
Christmas shopping is so difficult.
I'm the complete opposite of you. I don't have the tree up. I have nothing. I haven't bought a single present. It's gonna be a tough Christmas.
I'm somewhere in the middle, I think. I've not done any decorations at all yet, but I'm fairly organised on the present buying front. I've got like 2 or 3 things left to sort out, but I haven't even thought about wrapping yet. That's a Christmas Eve problem.
Christmas Eve? Oh my god. That would cause me some stress.
No, I do start before then, but I'm so slow with the wrapping. Anyone who sees me wrap presents, it's reaction worthy.
Thanks, Paige. Aaron, what have you been up to other than sort of a mix of not putting up Christmas decorations but buying presents?
Yeah, well, so as I say, a lot of Christmas shopping has been done over the past week. Obviously, Black Friday period helped a little bit with that. Yeah, just really getting in the festive spirit with no decorations, I suppose. They will be going up, but...
I can tell by the background, real festive.
Yeah, there's some red, that's a bit Christmassy. Anyway, yeah, that's sort of it for me, just a lot of preparation going on this week.
As for myself, yeah, as I said, no Christmas preparations. I guess I'm wearing reds. Technically, that's Christmassy. But this week's it's actually been quite busy for events. Everyone's throwing their Christmas parties in the UK games industry. So went to an event by Wigan on Tuesday, which was very good. Lots of interesting people there, and talks about M&A, kind of investments, where the industry's going, and a bit on like privacy and kind of child safety in the industry, which was fascinating as well. And then tonight we've got the Yuki drinks. So Yuki, for those that don't know, is the UK games trade body along with Tiger. And yeah, they're hosting their annual networking event tonight. So I'll be heading there straight after the show. I'm very much looking forward to that. It's always fun. And then the Pocket Gamer Awards is tomorrow. So we've got that as well, which crazily is the same venue as Wigan, so I know where to go at least. So yeah, lots going on this week. And actually, this is, Aaron mentioned before the show today, this is the penultimate week in mobile games for this year. So we started it this year, and I think it's gone really well. We've been growing the listenership and now the viewership, I guess, as we started recording actual video. So it's been really fun. And glad to hear that people are watching it, wishing Paige happy birthday. They heard it on the show. So that's really cool. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you find it interesting, at least fun, and hopefully some insights. So thanks everyone for that. A few shout outs before we get started. Obviously in January we've got the Pocket Gamer Connects London, January 20th to 21st. Other things we're doing at the moment, we've started a top 30 UK game makers list. So that's actually open for cross platforms. Any company that's kind of based in the UK, or has a studio that's developing in the UK. Maybe they're based actually elsewhere. I'll put a link for that in the description. So nominations open. We're going to start putting that list together. We'll unveil it at PGC. Right, let's get to the news. So not much from me. I'm gonna Paige and Aaron are gonna do all the heavy lifting, I think. But a couple I thought worth noting some of the big launches this week. It's actually been a big month or so, I guess, for launches. We've obviously had Pokemon trading card game Pocket, which we'll go into, and we've spoke about plenty as well. I think along with the rest of the industry, really interesting game. And Royal Kingdom was out not that long ago. I think that's still doing pretty well. It's growing, so one to watch. And then this week we've got Infinity Nikki from Infold Games, and I was just discussing: is it Paper Games or Infold Games? They changed their name, as Aaron was saying, to Infold. So it's like a weird combination of open world RPG, kind of like a Genshin Impact, with a more cozy game feel and dress up gameplay that the series is known for. We're going to try a new podcast idea because we can't get enough of hosting new podcast shows. We have the Interview Week of Mobile Games, and now we want to start, yet to be named, it's like a book club, a game club style, but game club's already been taken by another company, but a game club style thing where we're going to pick a game or pick a topic. In this case, on December 17th, we're going to record an episode all about Infinity Nikki. So it's going to be myself and Oscar Clark, and we're going to look into the game design, the monetization, the onboarding, just general opinions of the game, maybe what it's innovating on. But the other interesting thing that we want to try is just get other people's opinions. So please reach out to us. Like, you can email me directly, craig.chapple@steelmedianetwork.com. You could also reach out to us on LinkedIn or wherever. And if you want to give us your own, if you play the game for a bit, you've got a couple of weeks. If you want to give us some opinions, a bit of analysis, we can read that out on the show. Alternatively, if you want to record a video clip or an audio clip of yourself, we'll also play that on the show as well. So we just want to get lots of varying different opinions, and hopefully it'll be really good deep dive into a hot new game. And if it all goes well, we'll keep doing it. Gizmo is interested. For those that can't see, for the non-visual listeners, he wants a fuss. So anyway, after all that, so Infinity Nikki's out. So that's Dan in particular on PocketGamer.com thinks that's going to be a really big game. It actually reminds me a bit of the way it's come about a little bit. I know it's obviously different, but when MiHoYo did Genshin Impact, they'd actually had a few kind of hits before that, but kind of flew under the radar a bit more, I'd say, than Infold Games, in fact. But they did Honkai Impact Third and some other games. So they kind of geared up for Genshin, and then that became a huge success, really difficult to repeat. And it feels a bit like that with Infold. They've built up this IP. It is quite well known, but not like, I guess, global phenomenon like Genshin. And I actually forgot. So I remembered Love Nikki. I actually just completely forgot they did Shining Nikki, which Aaron pointed out as well. Yeah, and they've all made like a couple $100 million or a few $100 million. So I think with this, they've invested a lot. I could see it doing really well. We're quite excited about that. And then also, just to add on to that, is the other big launch this week, which for me, feels like it's flown under the radar, but I don't know if people are talking about it. But Tencent has released Delta Force. The thing that I find interesting, well, other than that, game's kind of got extraction gameplay in it, which has also been like it wants to be an industry trend, but it never really gets anywhere. Obviously, what's the game? Escape from Tarkov, but I'm talking like, I guess, PUBG levels of success. But the interesting thing about this is, these both launching the same day are two big launches from Asia, and they're both cross-platform, which I find fascinating. So yeah, not just mobile, but PC and console. So a really interesting month for launches, a week for launches, and maybe these could be the big hits of next year. We were talking last week about there's new top-grossing games, and maybe these will be the next ones as well. It feels like the industry's changing a bit. I rambled on for a while there, but Paige, Aaron, what do you think of I guess of all the new games coming out, but Infinity Nikki, Delta Force?
Well, firstly, The download size is pretty big, isn't it, on mobile for Infinity Nikki? I downloaded it earlier and I think it's taking up like 13 gigabytes on my phone, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it kind of is. But yeah, obviously it only came out today, so I haven't had a chance to try it. But yeah, like it looks really interesting. I like that it's cross-platform, and I'm assuming there's some form of cross-progression because when I like logged in, it let me log in as my PlayStation account. So I'm going to sort of give it a try between mobile and PlayStation and see how seamless that is, because that would be a really good selling point for me because I would like to play it on mobile when I've got like a little bit of time spare here and there. But if I got really invested, I would rather like sit and play it on the big TV and stuff. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see how it works between those platforms.
Yeah, I think they did confirm there's like cross save, so you can just pick up on whichever platform you want to, which, as I say, is a nice benefit, versatility depending on how and where you want to play.
I'm looking forward to playing it just to see how they actually match the more classic, like Nikki franchise gameplay, like the dress up stuff, with this open world. It kind of seems mad. I loved that it's what's the mechanic called? So you can change. I think Aaron, you're right about this, but you can change basically your costume on the go, and it's called Whim, which made me laugh because I guess you just change it on a whim.
I felt like it might be one of those games that people just download just because they're interested. Because like I had a quick look on social media earlier, and I saw a bunch of people that are just like I follow that are kind of your more traditional console gamers, and they were like, "What's this Infinity Nikki thing? I'm going to try it. It looks like a cool cozy game." So I don't know if it's one of those ones that is going to sort of branch out into an audience that wouldn't usually maybe play those games. Also, around like the festive period, a lot of people like to play a cozy game.
It does feel like cozy games have just, for me, obviously because of Animal Crossing, particularly during COVID, I think they probably started, that became more of a term as a total guess. It feels like I've really only been hearing it a lot this past year as an actual general trend. Not to say that haven't been other cozy games, but now it seems like a real concerted effort to make this style of more relaxing game, which I find really interesting. It's not all about I don't know, shooters or match three or I don't know, whatever. It's like, well, people want cozy games now.
That definitely is like the specific word that so many games are using now.
Yeah.
It's like a part of the brand now for those sorts of games.
So I guess it's going to be cozy versus action shooter. We'll see which one comes out on top. So elsewhere in the news, kind of semi-related to that, Lilith Games, another developer in Asia, they make AFK Journey, AFK Arena, Rise of Kingdoms, etc. There was reports that they laid off. Reports in China that they laid off 40 staff and cancelled Project Party, which again it was basically like a cozy game. It was going to be for both PC and mobile. It's like a life sim, and they had a team of 100 reduced to 60. The lead producer has left. Apparently, it's not cancelled. We reached out for comment but haven't received a reply. Although we do have an interview with them about other stuff, unfortunately, so we don't have any answers currently on the situation with that game. I guess it seemed like that was going to be their new big game. The funny thing, when I first watched the trailer, it was like whiplash because it starts off with like, oh, this actually looks really nice. It's like a sort of a little Sims game. It's kind of focused on UGC, so it's another. I guess it's their version of like it's not the same, but like Eggy Party doing the whole UGC platform. And it's like, oh, this looks lovely. Yeah, I can see. Yeah, it looks. And then suddenly, like towards the end of the trailer, it just like these lovely little characters, they just start like picking guns off the wall. There's like an armory suddenly in the house, and then there's all these zombies, and that's kind of it. Almost ends like that, and then it ends with they were playing a zombie game, I think. Anyway, it was really the trailer was odd, but it did look fun. But it sounds like they've had problems actually making that game work. So we'll see. I guess if I guess they're going to redesign it by the sounds of it. Don't know if it will ever see the light of day. Fascinating because the interview that we actually had earlier this year, they did very much say that we interviewed Lilith Games head of strategy and investment Vincent Wu, and he said that once they greenlight a game, they do everything they can to launch it. I'm sure every single studio that greenlights a game does everything they can to make it work and launch it. But I think what he was really getting at is like they're not just going to cancel it because it's had a bad soft launch or test. They're gonna take it back to the drawing board, make changes and really try and make it work, not just give up on it. So I would assume that's going to happen here, but again, whether it works, I don't know. And then last couple quick stories from me, just some M&A that's been going on. So PocketGamer has landed $3 million to simplify HTML5 game distribution. HTML5 is one of the big trends of the last few months, certainly, if not the year. Instant games coming back, Telegram, it's all kicking off in that sector, and we'll probably see a lot more of that next year. And then Nazara has just been in the news like every week, and twice this week. There's that Pacific Rim meme. We're going to get a double event. Nazara subsidiary Nodwin Gaming acquired Trinity Gaming for $2.8 million. And Nazara also invested in Funky Monkeys and LearnTube, and they also increased their stakes in to get full ownership of Sportskeeda and DataWorks. So, yeah, they're very busy. So that's enough from me. We're going to move on to Paige. What have you got?
Starting with some M&A stuff. I feel like the last few podcasts, maybe even for the last month or so, we've had quite a lot of like acquisition stories. So we've got some more here. Tencent has acquired a majority stake in Kuro Games. So they bought a 37% share from Hero Entertainment, which takes up their value to 51%. So they essentially now own more than what Kuro Games does in themselves. They've kind of said that they released a statement and said that they will still remain largely independent. But yeah, just Tencent, they've got their eggs in a lot of baskets. But again, I think it's quite normal for them to invest, but let the studios remain a sense of independence. We've seen it with like Supercell. But yeah, just another one to grow the list. And I don't really think like this is going to stop anytime soon. I can expect that in like 2025, I would say that there's going to be more M&A activity. Kind of coming on to my next story in a minute that will link with this. But yeah, just for Tencent in general, yeah, I'm not sure what you guys think of this one, with them having the majority stake, or, if you expect them to have a bunch more next year. Because yeah, they just seem to be very, very busy.
I think it's a really good deal. Like I'm a fan of Kuro games. Wuthering Waves, I think, is an excellent game, especially when they did the one of the beta phases, one of the test phases didn't seem to go very well, and they kind of went back to the drawing board and parts of the game, particularly the narrative and the combat, I believe. And the combat actually, I really enjoy when I've played it. And they also did the previous game Punishing Grey Raven, so they've actually had repeated kind of successes. And they're probably in that. They are in that open world RPG space, and so maybe, I don't know, in future there could be an even bigger game or just bigger investment into Wuthering Waves, to kind of go for that Genshin Impact. Maybe it helps with that, I don't know, level of game that I'm sure Tencent really wants. Obviously, they've got the Honor of Kings game coming out next year, which kind of feeds into that. But yeah, really interesting deal, and I think it's a really good one. That's why we rank them so highly in the top 50, just saying. But no, congrats to them.
And then sort of linking on from that story quite nicely, we had a feature on the site earlier this week from ZMAD, and the whole feature is on sort of trends and M&A strategies that we've seen throughout the year. It was written by ZMAD's M&A manager, Jana Vesnina. And yeah, it's a really good piece. I won't go into the whole thing because it's quite a long one. But it was just interesting how she explored just some of the types of M&A strategies that they've noticed throughout the year. So it sort of ranges from acquisitions that are for the purpose of quite a quick payback, obviously acquisitions that try and look at diversifying a portfolio. So companies that maybe are really known for one genre, acquiring something that's a completely different genre, sort of branch out a little bit. But it was also interesting that she highlighted some things that maybe years ago, maybe just even a few years ago, how things like day 1 to 30 retention would be something they would really look at if they're doing acquisitions, whereas now that's perhaps not a metric they're seeing being looked at as much. It's more maybe like daily active users, and apparently there's a much bigger emphasis on kind of faster returns. Obviously, if you make an investment in something, you want a return, but as with all things, sometimes it is kind of a long game, but there's maybe a little bit less of that. So I suppose that kind of makes sense with how the games industry has been for the past few years. Maybe even though M&A is on the rise, there might still be a bit of hesitancy of, these sort of long haul commitments. They want something that, I think she said in the feature between sort of like 2 to 3 years for maximum that they would want to see like returns on an investment, which sounds like a long time, but it's really not. But yeah, it's a really interesting feature. She covers a whole bunch of things, even like how AI is impacting the market. So say if you're making relatively simple games, say like, I don't know, a chess game, a Sudoku game, those titles might be valued at less because there's this, I don't know, air that maybe AI will be making these things in the future. So maybe the investment in that isn't looking as lucrative. So yeah, do go and read that for some much deeper insight than just what I've shared now.
It was a great article, and actually as well, we interviewed Drake Star Partners' Michael Metzger on the PocketGamer.biz podcast for the interview series this week, talking about M&A and many of the things that you just said. One of them was like looking at profitability and sort of the different things that investors are looking at into 2025. But otherwise, as you said before as well, like there just seems to be so much M&A going on again at the moment. It's really, really fascinating time.
Yeah, it's strange, especially with the contrast between obviously all of the unfortunate layoffs, but then seeing so much M&A activity in the last few months. So yeah, it's a strange sort of contrast that we're seeing. But final bit from me, and it's still about sort of buying and selling. So My Games has sold the publisher and developer Mambo back to its founding team. So it kind of marks a bit of a move away from the hybrid casual genre for My Games. They did sort of state that they want to direct their focus back onto what their core is, which is, publishing mid-core titles. This acquisition, I think, was originally made maybe like 3 or so years ago when hybrid casual was, having like obviously quite a big boom. So, kind of made sense at the time. But if they're looking at a different sort of refocus, I could see why this is maybe a move that they're doing. Mambo will obviously carry on doing their hybrid casual stuff and they'll just be able to do that more independently. But yeah, I just thought it was a bit of an interesting one in the sense of, is it as simple as it looks? Is it just, you're focused on this genre, we're focused on this one, so let's part ways? Or is it a short-term fix for something else? I don't know. Is it a money thing for My Games, just short-term? This is a solution for them right now. But yeah, like I said, it's either it makes sense that they're just looking at different aspects, or just given market conditions, it's just not something they want to hold on to right now. How I was just saying about the long-term things, maybe in the long term, My Games and Mambo would be a good fit, but maybe they feel short-term not so much.
We've seen a few deals like this, right? Which I think is obviously is where it's possible, much preferred that just sometimes I think a company just gets closed and then it's like, well, okay, all right, you could have sold it or I don't know, done something else with this company. But okay, close it, get rid of everyone. But didn't Saber Interactive, so they kind of got an investor and then they took it private again from Embracer. There are other examples that I can't think of now off the top of my head, but maybe it's just kind of similar thing of they just kind of take it back private. So yeah, interesting trend.
It's interesting as well because I think, so you say they were acquired in 2021. Obviously, hybrid casuals are becoming this big thing. But I think they were founded in 2020, so they were only around for like a year before they were acquired, and then they've had like 3 years under My Games. So it'll be interesting, I imagine, for them as well to go back to that kind of independence that they didn't have for all that long in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah,
we'll see how that goes, and it's a weird one of a company just moving away from hybrid casual whilst others move into it. But I guess it's if they got their focus, then that's where they're going to put all their money. Thanks for that, Paige. So, Aaron, you've got a few stories. What have you got?
Yeah, so NetEase has indirectly accused Hoyoverse of plagiarism. They pointed out some similarities between Onmyoji's Jinkogyo trailer, apologies for my pronunciation, and Honkai Star Rail's Soloist. So these are like 2 trailers for a NetEase game and Hoyoverse's Honkai Star Rail. And certain CG shots do look kind of similar between the 2, particularly like one scene looks almost inverted, and in Onmyoji there's all these people in like beams of yellow light shooting up into the sky, and then in Honkai Star Rail there's all these people in blue beams of light falling down. So yeah, NetEase's post didn't directly name, but used characters from Honkai Star Rail's Chinese title when saying that someone had plagiarized this video. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I guess it feels sort of like a small part of a broader conversation that's sort of been going on this year with stuff like Pokemon and Power World to do with like what actually counts as copyright, which obviously being no legal expert, I can't answer that certain, but it is an interesting debate when it comes to like designs and things, and at what point does an idea, cross over from just being a similar idea to actually copyright infringement, and taking what someone else has done. It's again using like the Pokemon Power World example. Their Power World or Pocket Pair are currently being taken to court for like infringing the patent around how Pokeballs work, that you throw something and catch a monster in it. And it's like, can Pokemon actually own the idea of throwing something to capture a monster? Maybe they do. But again, it's like, at what point does something become owned by someone versus a general concept? I know that's sort of an aside to the whole NetEase Hoyoverse thing, but yeah, it's all quite interesting.
I think the saying people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones comes to mind a bit harsh on the different teams technically. From NetEase's side, wasn't there a case, was it with NetEase, that PUBG was basically suing them over it was either Knives Out or I think more so Rules of Survival. So basically, Knives Out, Rules of Survival were two games initially that NetEase very quickly put out, to the point where I think Rules of Survival barely had any sound, or like it didn't have any ambient noise. You're just playing like a silent game at times. It was very strange because they rushed it out so quickly because they wanted to beat PUBG to be the battle royale on mobile, and it's kind of just the same game, right? And then later they had massive success with Knives Out Japan and I guess turn it into their own thing. And then I know they're accusing Hoyoverse of something. I can't say either way. But and then obviously Genshin Impact, very much its own game, but it also takes a lot of inspiration from Breath of the Wild, obviously, and a lot of the mechanics. And I don't know. I'm not saying, it's kind of besides the point, I guess, to what they're actually saying. I don't know if it is kind of plagiarism or if they're right to say, well, hang on a minute, this is very close. I think it happens a lot, particularly in marketing, that there's quite blatant copying because developers copy what works in user acquisition generally. I guess a bit different when it's a big sort of AAA title. Yeah, I don't know. I'm interested to see if this goes further into legal action, or they're just saying, oi, don't do this, just calling it out to win a few points maybe with the fans. Yeah, I'll go back to my original point about glass houses.
Yeah. Next up from me, we've got Nexon and Tencent's Dungeon and Fighter Mobile, which has surpassed 1 billion in gross player spending on China's App Store. And it's done that in just over 6 months. That's according to AppMagic estimates. And so the game hit 1 billion on December 1st. And that's without including any player spending from third-party stores on Android. And again, this is just in China. So yeah, 1 billion in 6 months is pretty good going. I wouldn't mind that. It did very well.
Yeah, give us a fiver, mate. Thanks.
Yeah, at least. But yeah, the title was China's most downloaded game over its first 30 days. And it already made 250 million in that first month, just on iOS. There were reports at the time from Nexon and Sensor Tower that it had made 500,000 in its first month, including the Android stores. So yeah, like 250 million on iOS, 250 on Android. Whether that's sort of held true since then is sort of unclear. If it has, then that would mean it's already made like 2 billion. It's made 1 billion on iOS, but yeah, we don't currently know whether that's the case. But yeah, obviously huge success, and I guess worth the wait after there were sort of issues getting it out a year or so ago, various Chinese legislation hoops to jump through, but yeah, it's clearly paid off.
Yeah, it's probably made, yeah. Whatever the multiplier is when you add Android, yeah, like you said, could have actually made 2 billion, probably 3 billion, 4 billion
Yeah.
gross.
Why not 5?
Quite amazing. I guess we'll find out more in the next financials as well from Nexon. They'll be pretty open about it. It's pretty important to them because before Dungeon Fighter launched, I think Nexon wasn't in like the best spot. With I think Dungeon Fighter wasn't even in the best spot actually. Like the online version, they had some issues. They did an update and there's some issues with the. I can't remember. Essentially, the monetization. It might have been the. I don't know if there's a marketplace or something. They messed something up basically, and there was a big problem. As they really needed this to work, and it has. It definitely declined a lot, but yeah, now it's kind of picking up again. So yeah, one of the big launches of the year, and again, it's a new game currently, at least in the top grosses.
Yeah, and last one from me is another new game, which is soft launched in Colombia and the Philippines, and that's Disney Solitaire. And this is by Superplay, and it's sort of a reimagination of obviously the Solitaire card game. It's got scenes from like Disney and Pixar properties, characters like Aladdin, Elsa, Mona. So yeah, it's currently out on Android in Colombia and the Philippines. It feels like there have been a few Disney mobile games this year. Like we had Joy City Corps, Disney Realm Breakers back in the spring, I believe, and then Gung Ho's Disney Pixel RPG came out a couple of months ago, I want to say. And yeah, now although it's only in soft launch, there's a Disney Solitaire as well.
Best, they got one of the hottest developers around with the IP. It's Superplay, worth $2 billion. So I'm excited to see that the one King game that was in soft launch that wasn't cancelled is the Solitaire one, Candy Crush Solitaire. There's something in Solitaire. Is that an emerging trend, or in the industry? I know there's a few already very successful like TriPeaks Solitaire games out there, but maybe we'll see more of it from more of the major players next year. All right. Thanks for that, Aaron. So we're going to move swiftly on to the week in views section. So, Paige, what have you got this week?
Well, it seems like I can't seem to help myself. Anytime there's a Ubisoft story just this year, I'm there.
You're like Aaron with Pokemon and Monster
I
Hunter.
know. I don't know what's happening. I think because we were saying in our morning call, like sometime this week, that yeah, Ubisoft just seems to be something I'm talking about a lot. But I think it comes from my love-hate relationship with them. Like I used to love them a lot, and now not as much. But I would like to get back there one day. So but yeah, in terms of mobile stuff, I think we mentioned this on the podcast maybe a few weeks back that Rainbow Six Mobile was making a bit of a comeback, but they were planning on doing it in sort of these 3 phases, which that is now underway. So the first phase has begun, and that's after 8 months of the game, just sort of being put on a bit of a back burner and then readdressing how they want to handle things going forward. So they have done a bit of a overhaul. There's a new game mode that is kind of a bit faster paced, so maybe works well for mobile. They've got new progression systems in there. But in general, I find it quite interesting given just some other stuff outside of mobile that's been going on with Ubisoft in I think it's literally just this past week. So they've had some more layoffs, they've had studio closures, and then they sunsetted their X Defiant game, which is, if you don't know, it's like a free to play shooter. And that only came out, I want to say, in May of this year. So it hasn't even made it through a full year. And it just makes me think that surely at some point with Rainbow Six Mobile, there must have been a very similar conversation. Like, do we keep this going? And obviously they have decided that they wanted to keep that going. So, hopefully that is a good sign of things that, they at least have, this phases, these plans in place for it. And they obviously have some kind of hope that it is going to be a success for them, because as of right now, it's not like Rainbow Six Mobile has really had any contribution to, Ubisoft overall. But they have some kind of hope in it. But yeah, just thought it was quite interesting given that they also had another shooter game that they've just sunsetted after not even a full year. I don't know, obviously console market's very different, so maybe with the new Call of Duty coming out and things, that was maybe the final nail for that. But yeah, I would love to see Rainbow Six do well. I do sometimes wonder if maybe they're hoping that if it does eventually get to a good place, if there's like a home for it in esports. Obviously, with like Rainbow Six Siege and stuff, like that game has been going for years, and there is still quite a big following for that. So yeah, I'm not really sure like what their long-term plan is for it, but they obviously have one because, like I said, I can't imagine that it hasn't been a discussion to close it or not, and they've opted to keep going.
Your point about Rainbow Six Siege, isn't that like is that one of the most successful games ever for
I think
Ubisoft?
so. I want to say that that's got to have been going for over 10 years now, surely.
Super successful game, and for some reason they're trying to replicate it with Rainbow Six Mobile. Maybe it'll work. I doubt it. But personally, no offense to the team, they might even make a good game. But I kind of wonder why Ubisoft bothers with mobile. To be honest, because they already have so many other issues at the company, and they're refocusing on what were the core tenets they've got to focus on. It was like open world, I think was one, and I can't remember the other one. They had these core focus areas. Does this match that? I don't think so. And all their mobile investments have been really scattershot over the years. They bought Ketchat, like really good company, but why? And then they bought Calibri, fantastic studio. Why is that a Ubisoft company? Bringing Rainbow Six to mobile if it wasn't going very well in testing, why do they think they can fix it? To be honest, you could go back to like earlier Lilith Games, like it sticks with titles now, and maybe that's probably been a bit more of a thing in the industry this year, where it's not as much fail fast. It's iterate and we'll do what we can to make it work. But I imagine that there's still the same tenets of mobile gaming hold, which is if you're not getting good feedback, you're not getting the KPIs you want in soft launch, you ultimately have to kill the title. And I think potentially Supercell finding that out with Squad Busters. They obviously believe in that, and would you bet against Supercell? Not really. Maybe the issue, I don't know. I think I'm confusing my points now, but like there is an issue I think with just got to cancel it sometimes. I think this is one of those, and I don't want to see layoffs or anything, obviously, but I think Ubisoft just doesn't seem worth doing mobile anymore for them unless they've got a very clear strategy. I probably can't make Siege cross-platform with mobile unless they can. Maybe that would be better.
Maybe if things were stronger elsewhere, you'd be like, okay, if they're trying something on mobile, they can afford to do that. But with how things have been, especially the past year, it's kind of like maybe just refocus on what is their these core points that they've said. You know, I mean, you usually think like your Assassin's Creed and things like that. So yeah, I am just intrigued to see how this pans out. If they go to all of this effort, go for all of these free phases, and then this game still just doesn't work, it's kind of, well, it's like you said, nobody wants to see layoffs and things, but you do just think, well, you know, why all the effort?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, redeploy those people to other projects. I don't know. That's what Ubisoft does with most of its studios, right? They always work on something else. Like Red League's just cancelled their mobile project, and they just do other stuff now. Again, it was like cool that they were working on that game. It looks pretty good, but it just, as it happens, Gwen's Getaway, it didn't work out. But I do just keep coming back to why, and I think it's something that some of the big console publishers are probably, maybe all of them, kind of been guilty of. In the end, maybe it's just an investor pressure thing to start with. You give in, you're like, all right, we'll do mobile. Here's a big acquisition that keep you all happy, and then they don't do anything with it, or it just completely has nothing to do with the rest of the business. I'm not saying it's never worked out. See, Activision and King worked out very nicely, but that said, and again, that worked out amazing. So I definitely wouldn't criticize the acquisition, but Activision has never been able to use King to leverage its IP. So yeah, it's a big question mark sometimes over big publishers venturing into this space. All right, thanks for that, Paige. Aaron, you've got as we mentioned, you've got Pokemon.
Yes, once again, Pokemon conversation.
You two alternate between this now.
Yes, Pokemon trading card game Pocket has skyrocketed to 200 million in gross player spending in its first month, according to AppMagic estimates. So yeah, it hit its first 100 million in just 17 days since global launch, and then has managed to double that and more since then. So as we've said a few times on this podcast now, it's a very successful game. It's been a huge launch, a lot of money, and it's averaged about 6.5 million per day in player spending consistently since it's come out. Obviously, some days peak higher at like 8 million plus, others go a bit lower, but yeah, it's doing very well. And so I've written a feature that I suggest people check out on the website about sort of what Pocket's done right, how it's managed to achieve this, because as a comparison to Pokemon Go, which obviously was a worldwide phenomenon when that came out, Pocket's made 91% of what Go made in its first month. So very successful, easily the second strongest Pokemon mobile launch. I sort of put some graphs together which help kind of visualize it in the feature. And they Go and Pocket have just like blown away all other Pokemon mobile launches. And Pocket's been kind of gaining ground on Go as well. So like comparing their first week, Pokemon Pocket made just under 60% of what Go managed in its first week back in 2016, which was still impressive, but it's about 60%. Whereas, as I say, for the full first month, it's made over 90% as much as what Go managed. So in actual numbers for Pocket, that means it made 202 million, and Pokemon Go made 222 million. So yeah, very close. And then as a comparison to that, the third biggest mobile Pokemon game, which is Pokemon Masters, made about 31 million in its first month. There's quite a lot of factors at play that I believe are kind of responsible for how it's done this well, because clearly it's not just a case of you kind of slap Pikachu's face on a mobile game and then suddenly it's like making hundreds of millions a month. There's more to it than that. In particular, it feels like there's a sort of sense of playground rumour that's come back in kind of an online form on like social media and in forums and things. Like there's been a lot of speculation going on around like the packs that you choose from to open. Some of them randomly have like a bent corner. So there's a big like fan theory that the bent corner means it's got better cards in it. And then so you got some people, spreading that quite confidently. Why would they bother to make some of the packs a bit bent if they're not any different to the other ones? But then you've got other people saying, well, they want you to spend money on packs. Why would they tell you which one's the best one to open? And then those kind of theories have sort of been fueled by other kind of secrets that have proven true, like that there's a secret Mew card in the game, which the game doesn't tell you anywhere that it exists or how you go about getting it. But once you hit the proper requirement, suddenly it's like, oh, you did this thing that we never told you to do, so now you get the special Mew card. So I think things like that are, kind of encouraging. This kind of, playground rumour feel of people trying to work out what's real and what isn't, and coming up with theories and stuff. Even though it's not quite the same as how Go had everyone out in the real world building up a kind of social element, it feels like this is kind of doing it digitally, which is quite interesting to follow.
I think it's really insightful to put it as like I love that the playground rumor sort of thing, and I think this is absolutely spot on. I think there's a lot that other companies could learn from that, and I know that there's already quite popular. I guess Minecraft the big one in terms of like they just drop you into a game without much of a tutorial, and you just kind of explore and find it all out yourself. Games have been doing that quite successfully for a while, but this is just a bit different, and in the way it kind of builds those online communities and people and discussions, I think it's really, really interesting. Yeah, I think, as I said, a lot of lessons can be learned from that. And actually, the one other thing I did want to say is like it kind of blows my mind to how close the revenue is to Pokemon Go, considering how much a phenomenon that was. I guess the only caveat to that is these are estimates, and it is very so I guess directionally, like you can still say it's directionally, but you still say it's a really, really successful game, and it's a lot closer than all the other Pokemon games to Pokemon Go. It's very hard for data companies to measure the success of a number one revenue generating title at launch, because how do you measure that? There's nothing to measure it against unless there's like public info. And I think they do other clever things with downloads, etc. So they're not made up. There's people behind the scenes like working on it, very, very, very clever people. But in the end, it's very difficult to do. So it's 91% of Pokemon Go's revenue. I wonder how much both of those titles actually made in the end. But that's the estimate we have to go on.
I guess it's also worth pointing out, obviously, inflation since then is going to have affected, how much, comparing a 2016 game to 2024, it's quite a big gap. But again, at the same time, Pocket's made like 700% of what Unite made at launch, and that's from like 2021, so that's not quite so long ago.
Which is mad as well. Really, really insightful piece. Thanks for that, Aaron. So I'm not going to go too in depth on this because I'm basically still working on this piece. I doubt anyone really realised, but I always wonder, people wondering why we didn't report on this story when everyone else has. So there's a story from the BBC. The headline was "Top-selling mobile games break rules on loot boxes." And then the intro is, "The most popular mobile games in the UK are being advertised without disclosing they contain loot boxes. Random in-game purchases, which critics say are exploitative and foster addiction. The regulator, the Advertising Standards Authority, the ASA, says it bans and removes ads which fail to make it clear whether or not a game contains a loot box." And then it says, and so, okay, I think the rest of the story, so I'm basically investigating an investigation, however pointless you might think that is, but it is what annoyed me about this story, and it's because it basically starts, I think the point of it is true, that there are developers advertising games out of loot boxes and they don't say what it is, right? That shouldn't be allowed, and the ASA should do stuff, and then the story kind of goes into the have no teeth. So I think the premise of the story is true. The numbers aren't correct, I think. So, but it's because of the way that they've reported it that I particularly kind of got my back up, and that's why I held off reporting it while we kind of looked into it. And so the paragraph says, but a BBC investigation found only 2 of the top 45 highest grossing games of Google Play Store actually followed those rules. And then they got an executive from Young Gamers and Gambling Education Trust, calling the findings deeply concerning. Right, but you can't... okay, before I actually get to it, then if you go way down the report towards the end, of those 45... 26 were labelled as including loot boxes, 22 of which were actively advertised at the same time. So 2 out of 22 is the story of publishers that we looked into. It's not 2 out of 45, because you can't say that. If you might as well say 2 out of 1,000 the top grossing mobile games advertise that they have loot boxes, but loads of those don't have loot boxes. So that's what frustrated me about this report. And again, the premise is true, so the industry kind of damages itself. But and that's what leads to these stories. But I think I want to word it carefully, because one of the things I hate in the world is when people start going the media, as if it's like this conglomerate thing that's against it. Anyway, I have thoughts on that, but in this case, it's like, I think in the UK there's just long-standing of misunderstanding of games and a bit of a negative attitude, particularly towards mobile games. And now you might say some of the things historically, it deserves some of that reputation. That, again, that's kind of another debate. But I just think this was just misreported, and I don't like the way it was done. So yeah, I really didn't like 2 out of 45 top grossing games. I think that is so misleading, and you just saw it repeated everywhere, and it's not true at all. So I'm writing a piece on that will probably be in the newsletter. But yeah, I was really unhappy about that. And then so I have data from Sensor Tower and Game Refinery, which I'll go to more in depth in the newsletter. But what I do have for the data side, so 78%, this is from Game Refinery, 78% of the current top 200 grossing games. Why did the report choose 45, by the way? I don't know. Of the current top 200 grossing games in the UK on iOS, it's not Google Play, have gacha mechanics. They couldn't share us Android. The report also picks out Monopoly Go. The highest grossing game on Play Store to contain loot boxes, Monopoly Go, was among those, not to mention random in-game purchases in its adverts. So I was looking into this because I was like, loot boxes in Monopoly Go. So it does have this sticker system, and then you could get like these vaults, and then you could get random stickers for your album. I was like, you can't like. I guess this is part of the issue. If I'm talking about the granularity of, well, what is, specifically, what do you, and then maybe I'm just part of the problem here. And the issue is ultimately it has a loot box and it doesn't say, right? But anyway, I asked Game Refinery about it. And then I said, what do you think? Does it have loot boxes? And they said, not really super directly. The main source for the stickers is from other events. They are used to give extra incentives for players to grind through other events, often more guaranteed rare cards as top rewards from events. Create incentives for engagement. So they create incentives for purchases for the extra dice rolls so you can get through those events. Sticker packs are, of course, also part of the bundle offers, but I see them usually more as a side offering when the dice rolls is the main hook on them. You can't ever buy sticker packs directly alone. So, what are the two sides of that? One, it's not like a typical loot box system. The other is it is a loot box system, and it just does it differently in a way they think could make more money. That was really getting into the granular details, but I thought I'd ask them, see what they said. The other thing is that I'm also looking into is that, and again, all of this I'm like really annoyed. The report's largely kind of the point of the report is correct, but I'm not sure what the BBC report is based on. I don't think they say like a data provider. I think what they've done for the report is they've looked on a Google Play Store page, and on there in the About section, it has the type of in-app purchases, and it says may include, I can't remember the exact term, but may include like random item or includes random item drops or something like that. And I think that is then what they've extrapolated from that to say, well, that gave us loot boxes. Which, if that is the case, I'd say that's not true either for loot box specifically. Oh, yeah, I think there's a few issues. And maybe I'm just being pedantic. But yeah, I just thought I'd discuss it. And yeah, I think the industry does have a problem here, but it's not 2 out of 45.
Yeah, I think like you said, it's the thing of the actual story is like it has its point, but the numbers, you're sort of reading it and you're like, that's what doesn't really add up. So like, yeah, I get like the frustration at it. And I think there's like a whole separate conversation on what is a loot box.
Yeah, obviously it's like different gacha systems, and then I am definitely being super pedantic about Monopoly Go's effective loot box system. It is a loot box. It's just a different way of getting to it. But is it the same outcome? Yeah. So I guess it's loot box, but yeah. All right. So after that rant, that gets us to the hour mark. So that brings us to the end of the week in mobile games. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you very much, Paige, for joining the show.
Yeah, nice to be here again. I'm looking forward to our final podcast. It's going to be festive edition.
We're going to talk about. We haven't really discussed it properly, but we're going to talk about predictions, I guess, trends, and be a special episode of the podcast, which means obviously that loads of big stories will suddenly break next week. We don't have time to do any of it. So thanks, Paige, and thank you, Aaron, for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks as well, as always. It's always a pleasure to talk Pokemon, to be here.
There'll be more of that next week. No worries. We'll bring them all out. We'll have StarCraft, Monster Hunter, Pokemon, anything Ubisoft. We'll have it all. And thank you obviously to Gizmo for his star appearance on the show. I think his insights were fantastic. We'll see you again next week. Goodbye.